Okay, so this is in continuation to our previous recorded video about carbohydrates. So the second biological molecule or macromolecules are what we call as your lipids. Now, many people know lipids as fat, and most of you have a very negative thinking about fat because when we say fat, you automatically think na mataba. But actually, fats or lipids are very important in our body. And later on, as we continue with our discussion, I will be telling you why fats are important in your body. Walang taong walang fat, and it's very unhealthy for a person to be without fat. So one of the defining characteristics of lipids or fats are that they are hydrophobic. So when we say hydrophobic, it means water fearing. As we all know, oils or your fats, they don't mix at all with water because they are hydrophobic. They repel each other. And another thing about lipids is that they do not form polymers. Earlier on, during the dehydration process, we said that we are building larger polymers by adding monomers to one another. But when it comes to lipids, they can form groups, they can be clustered together, but they are not connected. One lipid is not connected to another lipid with a bond. They are just together, they are formed together, they are grouped together, but they are not chained or connected to one another. So, like it says here, it does not form polymers. So, what you will find with lipids is that there are lipids that are sitting next or arranged closely to one another. And like I said, they are hydrophobic, so they really have no affinity with water. They are they don't mix at all, no matter what you do. You add water with oil, they don't mix at all. And the common lipids that we have in our body are fats, of course, phospholipids, and we will discuss about phospholipids in detail in our maybe fourth topic about the cell membrane. And then, of course, we have steroids. So let's go further into your fats. Your fats or your lipids, they are composed of two components. The first one is a glycerol head, and then the second one is the fatty acid tail. So let's look at what your fats actually look like. So this is what a fat look like. So this is the glycerol head, and then this is one fatty acid tail. In a triglyceride, which I will be showing you later, there are actually three fatty acid tails attached to one glycerol head. And the reason why these fatty acid tails are attached to this glycerol head is again because of the dehydration process. Again, dehydration, we are starting from something small and we are connecting them together to create a bigger molecule. So in this case, the glycerol head here has an OH. Actually, there are three OH. So like I said, in a triglyceride, there are three fatty acids attached to a glycerol head because of these three OH here. And then this OH will attach to the fatty acid, which is a hard hydrocarbon chain. So there's carbon here in the middle, and then there's hydrogen on the outside. So it's a hydrocarbon chain. And then in order for them to link or to fuse together, it's going to create one water molecule. So again, this is a dehydration reaction. So the kind of linkage that is formed between the glycerol head and the fatty acid tail that is formed during the dehydration process is what we call as an ester linkage. So earlier in the carbohydrate, the kind of linkage that was formed is glycosidic bond. But in fact, the kind of linkage that's formed between the glycerol head and the fatty acid tails are called as ester linkage. And in a triglyceride or in a triglycerol, it looks like this. This is still your glycerol head and then three fatty acid tails. So fatty acid tail number one, fatty acid tail number two, and fatty acid tail number 3. So all of your fatty acids are hydrocarbon chains. And there are 3 linkages that is formed here during the dehydration process. So one ester link here, the second ester link here, and the third ester link here. So in one triglyceride or triglycerol, we are creating 3 molecules of water because we are connecting 3 fatty acid tails on the dehydration process. So we are forming 3 ester linkages. And for each fatty acid tail, there is 1 water molecule that is formed. Okay, so fatty acids, they are hydrocarbon chains and they can be very long, meaning there's a lot of carbon on the middle, it's very long, and then there's a lot of hydrogen on both sides, or sometimes these fatty acids can be quite short. Now, there are 2 kinds of fatty acids, depending on the hydrogen bond that is formed between the carbon and the hydrogen. So the first one is a saturated fatty acid, and the second one is unsaturated fatty acid. So let's look on what these 2 kinds of fatty acids actually look like. So this is a saturated fatty acid, the one on top. And if you can see, between the carbon chains, there are only single bonds. So single bond here, single bond, until the very end of the hydrocarbon chain, there are only single bonds between the carbons. So if there are only single bonds, it means that it is a saturated fatty acid. Now, one of the characteristics of saturated fatty acids is that they have very high melting point. And because they have very high melting point, it means that at room temperature, these saturated fatty acids are solid because it takes a lot of energy to melt them. So even at 37 degrees, they are still solid because it takes more than 37 degrees to melt them because they have a very high melting point. The opposite of that is your unsaturated fatty acids. So in your unsaturated fatty acids, if you will check the bonds between the carbon, there is a double bond here. So once you see a double bond between the carbon chain, it means that it is unsaturated fatty acid. Now, in this case, this is a mono unsaturated fatty acid because there's only 1 double bond. But it's possible for a fatty acid to have more than 1 double bond. So in that case, it will be called as polyunsaturated fatty acid. So let's go back here to this image here. So in this case, your unsaturated fatty acid, they have lower melting points. It means that it takes a smaller amount of energy, smaller amount of heat for them to be liquid or to melt them. So it means that your unsaturated fatty acids, these are your oils that are liquid at room temperature. So let's give specific examples. So your butter and your margarine, they are solid at room temperature. So that means those are saturated fatty acids. Whereas your unsaturated fatty acids, all of your oils, your palm oil, your canola oil, your olive oil, your fish oil, those are all unsaturated fatty acids because they are liquid at room temperature. Now, between these 2 fatty acids, your unsaturated fatty acids are actually healthier. So especially your olive oils and your fish oils, they are healthier versions of oil. So if you will be cooking, it's actually okay to use olive oil. And fish oil is actually a good source of your omega-3. So there are vitamins or supplements that people take just so they can have more sources of omega-3 fish oils in their body because not a lot of people eat fish a lot. So unsaturated fatty acids are by far healthier compared to your saturated fatty acids. So again, when it comes to your saturated fats, they are composed of single bonds between your carbons. And like I said, they are solid at room temperature. Whereas your unsaturated fats, they contain a double bond, such as here, shown here in this side. So unsaturated fats are healthier because they are your liquid at room temperature. And mostly your unsaturated fats come from healthier sources, such as plants like your olive oil, or in some cases, animals such as your fish oil. But between saturated and unsaturated fats, the healthy option is always the unsaturated fat. Okay, so most animal fats are saturated, such as your butter and your margarine, whereas your unsaturated fats, usually they come from plants, so they're healthier version. And studies have shown that a high intake of saturated fats actually cause several cardiovascular diseases because um, they create blockage in your arteries and in your veins, or what they call as your plaque deposit. So here is another example of your saturated fat. And then of course, unsaturated, again, they usually come from plants. In some cases, animals such as the fish, they're liquid at room temperature. You commonly know them as oils, and they are healthier in version. So this one is oleic acid. Again, it's oil at room temperature, and it has a double bond here. Therefore, it is categorized as unsaturated fatty acid. Now, when it comes to unsaturated fatty acids, there are two additional classifications. We have the cis and the trans unsaturated fatty acids. So what's the difference? In your cis unsaturated fatty acids, you have to locate for the double bond. So the double bond is here. If both the hydrogen is on the same side, meaning the ones with no hydrogen is also on the same side, that is a cis unsaturated fatty acid. So here, we all know in chemistry, carbon can create four bonds with other elements. So let's count. This is 1, this is 2, 3, and 4, because double bond here. So this carbon here is complete. For this carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, this carbon is complete. So it's not possible to add another hydrogen here or another hydrogen here. So because these hydrogen are both on the same side, they are categorized as cis unsaturated fatty acids. Whereas when it comes to your trans, they also have a double bond, but in this case, the hydrogen are on opposite sides of each other. So again, this carbon, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one is already complete. And then for this carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, this carbon is complete. But if you will notice, the hydrogen are on opposite sides of each other. Therefore, this one has no hydrogen on this side, and this one has no hydrogen on this side. So this is a trans unsaturated fatty acid. Again, for saturated fatty acids, all throughout is single bond. For unsaturated fatty acids, there are double bonds found along the hydrocarbon chain. If it's only one double bond, then we call it as the monounsaturated fatty acid. But if there are more than one double bond found along the hydrocarbon chain, then that is a polyunsaturated fatty acid. Now, if it's a cis unsaturated fatty acid, it means that the hydrogen is on the same side. Whereas when it comes to your trans unsaturated fatty acid, your hydrogen is on opposite sides of each other. Now, between your, we said unsaturated fatty acids is healthier. So does it mean that both cis and trans unsaturated fatty acids are healthy? The answer is no. Trans is the healthier choice. So, sorry, your cis is healthier compared to your trans fat. So if you can see here in this picture, it says here that there is no trans fat, meaning it's healthy because it does not contain any trans fat. You can see on the label or on the food label at the back of whatever you're eating or whatever food product that you have, how much fat does it contain. So it will see here that there's saturated fatty acid, there's polyunsaturated, there's monounsaturated. in terms of the monounsaturated, how many is trans and how many is cis. Usually they just tell you how many is trans. If there is no trans, then all of those will be 0. Okay, so all of the food that you eat, it actually has a bit of fat. You just have to choose what kind of fat you take in. So if you're choosing, the healthier choice is always the unsaturated cis fatty acids. Okay, and like I said, there are 3 common places or uses when it comes to your fats or lipids. The first one is in your phospholipid. The entire phospholipid is actually made up of your phosphate that is attached to 2 fatty acids. So it's actually, it looks similar to a triglyceride, except that instead of glycerol, it has a phosphate head, and instead of 3 fatty acids, it only has 2 fatty acid tails attached to it. And your phospholipid is actually found in the cell membrane of all the cells in our body. And not just in our body, in all living organisms, because even bacteria has a cell membrane. So even bacteria has a phospholipid. So they have lipids, okay? And again, this phospholipid has this hydrophobic characteristic, meaning it does not mix with water. At the same time, the phosphate head is hydrophilic, meaning water loving. And we will discuss this phospholipid in detail later on. Okay, so this is what a phospholipid looks like. This is your cell membrane. And if we zoom into your cell membrane, it is composed of this phospholipid. Again, it is composed of this phosphate head and 2 fatty acid tails. So this is the phosphate head. This is an ester bond here. There are 2 ester bonds or ester linkages formed between the head and the tails. And then this is your fatty acid tails, 1 and 2. Okay, so again, when they are added to water, the phosphate head will mix with the water, but the fatty acid tails will not mix with the water. This is why, or this is what allows the cell membrane to be semi-permeable. It can select, it can choose what goes in and what goes out. Not everyone can go in because of the hydrophilic part. Not everyone can go out because of the hydrophilic part. So the selectivity of the permeability of the cell membrane is made possible because of this fatty acid tail. Okay, so again, this is what your cell membrane looks like. We will discuss this very detailed on our next topic. And then another kind of lipids that is commonly found in our body is what we call as your steroids. Your steroids are found in your hormones. They control the growth and the metabolism in your body. At the same time, some medications they contain steroids, especially for pain medications. Some of them are steroidal. I know most of you, when you say steroids, all you think about is bodybuilders, the one with big bodies. And yes, that's true. They also have steroids, but not all steroids are very negative in nature. So the ones in your hormones and the ones in the medicines that are available commercially, those are the good steroids. And then, of course, cholesterol. Cholesterol is very important because it's found in all of your cells. It is what makes your cells fluid. So it can, for example, if this is your arm and then you point or you touch it like that, you hit it like that, it will not break because your cells can move. It can be downwards like that and then go back up and then go down and then go back up because of your finger. And the reason why it can do that is because it can change shape. And it can change shape because there are cholesterol inside your cells, in your cell membrane, which allows them to move, to be fluid, and to change shape. At the same time, the fats in our body, it also helps in thermoregulation. So it means that it keeps you warmer, even if your environment is cold. It's one of the reasons why in areas where it's cold, such as here Alaska or in Russia, where most of the time there's snow and the weather is really cold, they eat food that are very high in fat. because it helps their body stay warm, even if the environment is cold. So it helps in the thermoregulation. At the same time, when we go to biology too, when we study the different parts of the body and the different organs in the body, you will see that the most important organs in your body, such as the brain, the heart, and all the other organs, are actually protected by not just the skeletal system, but also by a layer of fat. So even your, what do you call this, your ass or your puwet, they are made up of fat. Most of them are made up of fat, so that if you fall, there's a cushion. So hindi mo ramdam yung bigat ng bagsak mo, because there's a cushion of fat there. And the reason why there's a cushion there is because your spinal cord is, the end of the spinal cord is there. So if you fall and there's no cushion, chances are the impact will be absorbed by your spinal cord, which is actually very dangerous because your spinal cord controls your motor system. So your movement, you can move your arm, you can move your feet because your spinal cord are coordinating them. But if your spinal cord is damaged, then your movement will also be very limited. Even your heart, in the chest area, there is a layer of fat there, and even the brain, there's some sort of layer of fat there that allows it to absorb any impact in case nauntog ka or in case of accident. They absorb the impact first before it can go to the organ. So your cholesterol or your fats, they're very important in your body. They're found in all of your cells, which allows it to be fluid and allows it to change shape. At the same time, it helps in the regulation of the temperature in your body. At the same time, it also protects your important organs. So like I said, you have a negative idea on what fat is all about. All you're thinking is mataba, but actually all of us, even the thinnest person in class, has a percentage of fat inside their body. Walang tao na walang fat. And it's very unhealthy and dangerous if a person does not have fat in their body. So too much fat, that is the negative aspect. Pero a certain level of fat is always normal and healthy for everyone. So we can eat oily food. I know some of you like that, yung prito-prito. Masarap yan, lechon. It's very high in cholesterol. Even yung sa crab, yung itlog niya. Alam ko masarap siya, and they're very high in cholesterol. Normal intake of fat is okay. That's healthy. But too much, then that's going to be a problem, especially if your intake is more of the saturated fat compared to the unsaturated fat. So if you're going to intake, try to choose the healthier option. And then, of course, limit your intake. Okay, so that's the end of lipids. The next discussion will be on the next biological molecule, which is all about protein. So for the rest of the week, please do watch the other videos and do the online assessments, and then the other modules that you can answer. And then next week, I will be sharing the recorded video for proteins. And then I'm pretty sure you have an experiment regarding enzymatic reactions, and then of course additional modules and videos to watch. After that, after my discussion on proteins, that's when I will be giving the assessment that will be graded and recorded. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.